The first thing that comes to my mind is fearlessness. So I've always been fearless or somebody who would take calculated risks. In the few examples I gave you, or what I do in my daily job, or what I encourage my team to do with their customers, is take risks, be fearless.
Welcome to Revenue Insights. We're joined by revenue leaders from some of the highest growth companies. Together, we explore how they built their revenue teams, the journeys they've been on, and the lessons they've learned along the way. Revenue Insights is brought to you by Ebsta. We're an AI-first revenue intelligence platform designed to help you close more deals, retain more customers, and forecast better. Enjoy the podcast.
So, hello everybody, welcome to the Ebsta Revenue Insights podcast. We're joined today by Raja Agrawal, who is the VP of Sales for a business called BrowserStack. Very excited, very lucky to have Raja here with us today. There's no one better placed in this conversation to introduce himself than Raja, so I'm going to kick it straight over to Raja. So, Raja, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are? And where you've come from. You've had quite a distinguished journey over the last decade or so in the software space. So love to hear your journey and your story and what brings you here today.
Perfect. Hello, everyone. And thank you, Adam, for having me. I love this community, and I hope this would be a useful conversation. I'll start what I'm doing right now, and then I'll go back and give you the whole journey. So currently, I am the VP of Sales for BrowserStack. So BrowserStack is one of the best success stories coming out of India, where we are innovating in India for rest of the world, and we are exporting innovation to the world. We are a business that helps large corporations and small companies test their web and mobile applications before they go to market with them. Using our technology and SaaS platform, companies are able to increase their go-to-market speeds, improve the customer satisfaction, retention, and all of those things by automating all kind of tests they need to do. So in this organization, I am the VP of Sales, and I lead the global team that sells into the enterprise customers. A little bit about myself on how and what led me to here. So I was born and brought up in a remote village in India. When I was graduating from IIT Bombay in 2007, my family was heavily in debt. And the only option I thought I had was to go out of India, make some money, and help my family pay its debt. So I searched for jobs frenetically. I think I applied for over 1,000 jobs. Back in US in 2007, there were visa issues. So I ended up, or I'm very happy, at SAP in Paris as a software developer. I graduated in computer science, kind of a natural move. But very quickly as a software developer, I realized I am better in front of the customers, and I wanted something like a customer facing role. When I talked to a few mentors and advisors, they said, you just can't go from being a developer to a seller. Try to make a path out of it. So I moved into software consulting at SAP, and this is, I would say, advantages of working in a multinational like SAP, where you can change your professions easily. After doing consulting for a bit, I still really wanted to get into sales. I was really trying hard to get into sales. I was writing to a lot of VPs and SVPs, but no responses, even internally. So one day I called the assistant of our SVP back in the time, and I asked her, tell me, when is Santina going to be in Stockholm? Because as a consultant, I was fairly popular in the Stockholm area at the time. After a lot of hesitations, he told me, on this date, Santina will be there. So I called up everyone at SAP who I thought Santina might meet on the day to tell her she needs to hire me. So end of the day, when she was going to the airport, she calls me up and she was like, "Who are you? Stop harassing me. I am in Paris next week. Come and meet me." And that's how I moved into sales. So by harassing her VP, more or less in a good way to give me a job. And even when she gave me a job, she was like, "You are very junior. We'll give you something that nobody cares about." So I took the job and I kept doing what everybody cared about. And every Friday, I would send her a mail that these are all the things I have been up to. A few weeks down the line, she calls me up and she says it's impossible to cope up or manage all the things you are doing. So like, just do whatever you want. We'll take care of you at the end of the year. And at the end of the year, it was it's a great end of the year for me, where I ended up going to the President's Club at SAP. With that, so I had a lot of fun at SAP. Then I moved to Microsoft when hyperscalers and cloud computing was coming up. I started in Western Europe, then France, and moved to Middle East, which is such a fantastic part of the world and growing at a high pace. A lot of people always told me you are a startup material. You need to go and work in a smaller company. I don't know why, and maybe we'll figure it out in the next hour. There were startups that I was advising on my free time. BrowserStack seemed exciting. The role is interesting, and this is where what has led me to where I am today.
I imagine it's a lot easier to turn a software developer into a salesperson than it is to turn a salesperson into a software developer. So,
Now,
well, you had it required a lot of persistence. It's obviously, something that you felt very passionate about. What would you put your success down to? What are the key criteria for anyone in that position? What were the things that made you successful?
the first thing that comes to my mind is fearlessness. So I've always been fearless, or somebody who would take calculated risks. In the few examples I gave you, or what I do in my daily job, or what I encourage my team to do with their customers, is take risks, be fearless. I often use the expression, "What is the worst that can happen? Let's go out and try." And very often we find a way. So that is something I would highly attribute something about my success. The second thing has been about constant learning. So without, let's say, the education I got in Mumbai, I wouldn't be definitely like a kid from a rural India. I was not even dreaming about the life that I am living right now. So the basic education got me to certain places, and I've been a constant learner. And this is what people who like praise about me most often, is the growth mindset that I often demonstrate. Then what can we learn out of this? So these two things would be, I think, the most distinguished thing that if you ask people about me, they would mention these two things.
Yeah. And I mean, SAP is one of the original technology businesses, right? As is Microsoft. They're both enormous companies. How did you find the transition from huge enterprise technology businesses to BrowserStack, which employs about 1,500 people globally?
So it has been interesting in the sense, the things I feared the most during the transition turned out to be the easiest, and the things I thought would be easiest turned out to be the complex. So let me give a double click on this. So at SAP and Microsoft, we would have long meetings with a lot of people, and maybe action would be decided, and all of would be like, why do we do these calls? These are a dump of time and this kind of things. Now at BrowserStack, my calendar is often filled with 15-minute meetings where I am presented very limited data, and me or as a group, we have to take a decision within those 15 minutes. If I hadn't spent those time in those 3-hour meetings at SAP and Microsoft, I wouldn't be as ready as I am in these 15-minute meetings to take those decisions.
What do you mean by that? Tell me more.
So often, let's say, when you would be looking at a part of business, with the way the SAP or Microsoft are, we would have tons of data points. We would have tons of information, feedback from the people on the field, that what may be working, what may not be working. And we would analyze them for hours to decide our strategy for the upcoming period. Whereas now, being in a smaller organization, we do not neither have the tools nor the wisdom nor the people. We have very limited data points, and you have to make decisions in those, let's say, 15 minutes. How many events do we do next year? How do we pivot some of the sales strategies? Do we focus more on hunting, or do we do more farming? Or where do we put more headcounts? Or not, like, we are not making all the big decisions in 15 minutes, but often you have a very limited amount of time, very limited amount of data, and you have to make decisions that would have long lasting impact.
Yeah. What would be, because I have a similar experience, right? So I've worked in those big behemoth enterprise businesses, and I've also worked in young startups, and no surprises as to where I currently am in that young, dynamic tech startup where things are changing, month over month, week over week. I get the sense that you can add a lot more value in these smaller businesses. But from your perspective, if there was one or two things that you could take from BrowserStack that are really kind of help position that as one of the leading technology app businesses in the world, and take some of the things that you do at BrowserStack and take them back to Microsoft and SAP, what would they be?
Well, that's an interesting one. The reverse one is easier to answer. What would I take from BrowserStack and bring to Microsoft? I think, but I don't know if you can actually do it. I'm like the agility with which we can make decisions and the speed at which we can sometimes move. That would be fantastic to have and see at a large organization like SAP or Microsoft. But I'm not sure if they can actually do it because of their size and how many people need to come together for such decisions. What we are currently, like, our founders have this vision of creating fans for our products. So how do we not actually sell, but just enable to buy in what customers are trying to buy? And there has been a deep focus on customer obsession. I'm sure Microsoft has something similar, but I would probably bring that back to SAP on how you take care of the customers after the sale has happened. I think you touched a little bit upon it, and like is more, let's say, self-filling is the impact I can make. So in the larger organization, SAP or Microsoft, I think I was doing a good job. But the actual impact or actual decision-making powers I had were limited to the geography or the team that I was managing. Whereas at BrowserStack, every single decision impacts a lot more people and company strategy. And there is a burden of that impact. So I've gotten used to it in the past few months. But when I joined BrowserStack, I couldn't go to bed at night, in the sense I would keep looking at the ceiling and wishing and praying that whatever decisions I took, like I wished and hoped they turn out to be the right ones, because you don't know if you're making the right decision. Whereas I didn't have those sleepless nights at SAP or Microsoft. So now I've gotten used to it and I sleep at peace. But that was another big transition point.
Yeah, interesting. So let's switch gears for a little bit. You've been in sales, I think, since 2014, according to LinkedIn profile. That, in my mind, is approximately a decade, almost, maybe a bit more than a decade. I've seen enormous shifts in the way businesses operate and the way businesses go to market. But in your mind, what's the biggest shift? What's the biggest difference between now and 2014 that you see in go-to-market, selling, doing business in general?
I think one thing that is probably very obvious is the current buyer is a lot more informed than they used to be. Oftentimes, I would be surprised, and I'm still surprised daily, when customers know more about the space, about our products, about the technology, more than the best engineers we may have in our own teams. So the buyer today is a lot more informed. They know exactly what they are looking for, and this is where, how do we enable in their journey? That would be, let's say, the first thing that would come to top of mind. And probably the patience to see the ROI has probably also gone down. People want to see faster impact. Uh, the the fear from digital companies is a lot higher. So let's say a big bank in France probably doesn't worry so much about another bigger bank in France, but they are worried about a fintech company and completely coming and disrupting their market. Like in UK recently with Revolut getting the license, we are working so much with all the UK banks because they want their app to be the best app and beat Revolut to it. So there is this sense of urgency where even the traditional businesses want to behave like a startup and move quickly, which probably wasn't there before.
What are some of the things that'd be some great takeaways, I imagine, with your experience for our audience? What are some of the key things that you're doing today to account for buyers being more aware and more knowledgeable about everything in general?
So BrowserStack, I don't know if the challenge is common. You can tell me. So we have had tremendous growth as a product-led company. A lot of our initial years, we were just selling through our website. Even today, we do more revenue through our website than most of our competitors do entirely, which led to this product-led growth and all these motions. So we obsess about our products and features and benefits. Where the biggest change I am bringing right now is start with the customer pain points. Worry about what their OKRs are, and then work backwards. Do we have the technology to solve for it? And this is where it connects to what you were asking me. Even though who we would call a champion, usually what their pain point is, what they think their pain point is, may not be their actual pain point. Or even if it might be their actual pain point, with the world we live in, the budgets are very limited. So you don't have to worry, or you want to care about that person, but you also have to care about what their superiors or executives think. Can they get the budget unlocked? Because oftentimes we have everything successful, it goes up for approval, finance approvals, and then somebody higher up says, no, we can't spend money on this or this thing because of we haven't done the business case properly. So with this new economy and an informed buyer, so what we are spending time on is informing more our existing buyer on what their leadership cares about, how we can work with them to solve what is being discussed in their board meetings and not just solve something in silo.
Yeah, I completely agree. I see the same thing with the way that we go to market, right? It's I think people are tired in 2025 or 2024, 25 of buying features and buying things to do a thing. And what they really need and what they care about is actually the outcomes. And what technology businesses have been poor at, I think, is actually helping clients achieve the outcomes that they promise with their technology. And everyone's spent the last 10 years being wowed by features and hey, great that I can now record my calls, or I can now, press a button and my forecasting is done for me. Actually, we need to use technology to deliver an outcome. And I think by focusing relentlessly on the customer, that's how you really understand the pain point, but you can align your solution. But in many cases, what we see is that it's ultimately a process of change management using the technology that drives the outcome, and that's the bit that I think a lot of technology businesses are missing. So tell me, you're based in the Middle East right now, and you've had a lot of experience in the Middle East, and you work for an Indian-based company, but you have a global sales team. What are some of the challenges that you're facing around culturally different markets? How do you think about that, and how does that inform your decision making when it comes to GTM and revenue?
A lot of people don't, let me say, laugh at this. I feel sales is more art than science, but that's a personal philosophy. People do tend to disagree with this. It could be done in a scientific way. I believe sales is more art than science. So if you take example from Nordics, where Stockholm or Sweden is a very bottom up country, You can't go and sell to the CIOs and the executive side. You have to start from the bottom with the actual users who would use your tool daily, and then move higher up. And the CIO or the decision maker would just ask their team, "Are you okay with this?" And the decision is taken. Whereas go to a slightly closer country, Denmark, the culture is top down. You have to meet the executive first. They need to be convinced. Only when their team members answer your calls or engage with you. And this learning I had very early on in 13, 14. So since then, I've taken extra caution and pay a lot of attention to what are the cultures that we are operating in. How can that be an advantage to whatever we are trying to do with the customer? So there was another philosophy there. So as an Indian person in Europe, I would always struggle to have small talk with customers because I didn't know the culture. I didn't grow up there. And one of my mentors told me that when Ronaldo is, taking that shot at the goal post and there are a few seconds left, he is not using his weaker leg. He is definitely shooting the ball with his stronger leg. So figure out what your strengths are and then build on them. And this is where I brought my Indianness and how people are fascinated by Indian culture into conversation. And then small talk became very easy for me. Another another example of the culture or the location awareness. So I started my Middle East role while I was already in Paris. And I get on a call with this energy company, and I'm telling them all the awesome things we have done with Shell and Total and Repsol and Equinor. And the account manager slightly pings me on the side, like, tune out of the conversation. And we can help them make so much money. And like, why are you asking me to shut up? And I was the executive in the call, and like he asked me to shut up. So I slowly tuned out. And I asked, obviously we had a debrief call, like, what did I do wrong in that meeting? And he was like, we are talking to a Middle East customer. They probably don't care so much about the efficiency of oil extraction. It's a political, geopolitical kind of decision on how much oil they want to dig in the upcoming period. So it doesn't matter what is the efficiency of the oil rigs. It's a very political decision on where they want the price of oil to be. So anything you did in Europe probably won't work with the energy companies here. Sorry, few examples, but coming back on the cultural nuances. So as we all grow up differently, I think we have a lot of preconceived notions and assumptions about people, about places, about situations. And what I have learned at Microsoft predominantly is never to make assumptions about a person or a situation, and just show immense curiosity to give everyone a chance to figure out what is going on. So a lot of times this happens currently in my role, as majority of our colleagues are based out of India, whereas my team is the global team based out of India. And they would often be debating about things. And as I've lived most of my life out of India, I can see the disconnect they are having. So just getting them on a call and explaining them just sorts itself out. And I think building this empathy for each other, and this is what I keep saying, we have to build empathy for each other. We don't know what the other person is going through. And just having, and we are a remote first company. All our employees are remote across the globe. So that makes it even harder.
We'll return to the episode in a moment. This podcast is brought to you by EBSTA. Every year, we produce the B2B Sales Benchmarks Report. It provides insights from the analysis of billions of revenue dollars, revealing what attributes drive top sales performance and highlighting where time and money are wasted. To get early access to this year's benchmarks report, sign up for our newsletter at ebsta.com/newsletter. Now, back to revenue insights.
Yeah, interesting. So let's unpack a couple of things there. First and foremost, if you're ever talking to a Brit, you can always talk about the weather, right? We love it. Small talk, it's weather. That's definitely something that is a true stereotype. Really interesting. I always find that for me, I always aim to be memorable. whatever it is, you do your research, you go into sales calls, you go into, meet execs, like, you've got to read the room, read your audience. But how can you, whether it be a little quip or a little, something that you found on LinkedIn or something, how do you be memorable? Because that's, you've got 15 minutes with these people. You've got more chance to, have a follow-up meeting if you can build that instant rapport. And I think, it's one of the things that's been a key part of certainly my career. You touched on the end there, there's that you're 100% remote as a business, and that might be because of the global nature, right? But what's your take? There's a big conversation, a big debate about whether people should be working from home or whether they should be remote. But how does being 100% remote affect your day to day? I imagine you spend a lot of time in offices when you're at SAP and Microsoft, but how do you find that, and how do you counteract the fact that there are no water cooler chats and you can't just run over to finance and ask a stupid question?
The simple answer is I really miss going to an office. I really miss those corridor conversations. So I had a habit where end of every day I would just walk in the corridor for at least an hour and talk to everyone. And that would be kind of like the majority of my forecast call, because not just with my team, talking to everybody else in the account team would give me a lot more insights to be sure about what is happening. But if you ask me to go back to a full-time office job, probably I won't take it. So that is the anomaly. So I miss it, but I don't want it. And that is why we as a company also took that decision. A lot of really great talent finds it inefficient to go and spend 2 hours or 1 hour on the traffic. We allow our employees to find the working hours that suit the business needs, but also suit their personal family time and whatever their personal preferences are. We have found a formula which kind of works. Honestly, I was surprised when I see how well it works. So every few months, every function meets together for team building and all those kind of things. So we spend a week every few months as a function, and then all the cross-functional leaders meet once a quarter in our headquarters in Mumbai. So that allows for a lot of cross-organizational collaboration, and that I think is a good balance. So we meet and have all those occasions. Could we do it more often? Could we do it less often? There are always debates and philosophies, but I think we are able to retain the top talent. Or also, let's say in my sales organization, I want people to be in the big hubs in New York, in San Francisco. So we are able to hire people in those cities. They can work from home, but if needed, they could visit easily the customers.
Interesting. What do you think? There's a specific negative impact to your business working 100% remote, or do you think you can overcome it just by the processes that you've put in place?
I think collaboration does remain a challenge when you're 100% remote. We are hiring aggressively, so for a lot of employees it is still hard to figure out, like, you can't just ask stupid questions over Slack, I guess, whereas when you're face to face you could ask them all the question, like, how do I install this or get this thing done. So for newer employees it is definitely harder. And for me, I think in the office days, the cross or collaboration was a lot easier versus today. So and I don't think we have solved for it, or there is a global solution out there. The collaboration piece is still tricky.
I agree. I think my biggest worry isn't really necessarily right now, but it's what's happening to the younger generation as they come through out of university into employment. Because for me, the first 10 years of my career in the office, 5 days a week, absolutely standard. You pick up so much, you learn so much just by listening, by being in the environment. It accelerates and elevates your knowledge, understanding, your ability to handle conversations, to understand what's going on across all of that stuff. I think we'll actually see a big impact in 10, 15 years time, as we don't know necessarily how to or we haven't learned all the intricacies and the nuances of operating in an office based system. But it'd be interesting to see where we go.
That is such a fascinating comment you made, because that is almost the story of my life. but I didn't think about it for the next generation. But that's story of my life in the sense I had one goal when I was in that consulting slash business development role. I wanted to be in the rooms with salespeople. That was one objective. I would fly, I would take trains, I would sleep at a friend's couch, like whatever it took. I just wanted to be in the room with the salespeople because there is so much happens in the corridors, at the coffee, at all of those things. I still feel and believe that the actual sale doesn't happen when you are sitting in the conference room discussing it because you take the supplier and vendor persona. But the actual sale happens before and after meeting. When you're just talking as humans trying to help each other. Uh, so I learned that as a developer, I didn't know anything about sales. You could even question what I know about sales today. But anything that I have learned is in those physical rooms and opportunities that I got to spend with the best guys at SAP, at Microsoft, with executives. I even remember I went to Vegas. It was a long trip for a meeting, but like some of my customers were meeting executives at SAP. Like there is no way hell I'm missing the chance to be in that room. And I didn't speak a word, but that was so much such a learning to be in those rooms.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. I really enjoyed the conversation so far, Raja. It would be remiss of us not to talk about AI. There's been an explosion in AI, not just in sales, but in every facet of the world over the last 10 years. What are you doing from a sales leadership standpoint, from a business standpoint in AI? How has it infiltrated your existing process? How are you leveraging it? Talk us through that.
You would find a lot of oxymorons or anomalies in my stories in the sense our founders are AI skeptic, but in the last 6 months, they have become AI fans or fanatics. I don't know what would be the right word. Just because how customers have reacted to our AI solutions. Because we already had around 12 point solutions that we were doing very well in, and we are category leaders in what we do in those 12 categories. With AI, while let's say a lot of the world or rest of our competition is on PowerPoint or Vision, we were able to stitch together all those 12 products, give it an AI interface, which is and looks so awesome. So the consistent feedback we get is, hey, everybody else is talking about AI, whereas how come you guys are so far ahead? We are ahead because we already had the solutions. We just stitched them together with AI so that as it's not a human who is calling the next tool or the next process, but the AI is doing it automatically. So that way, as a business, I think we are seeing a lot of momentum in AI. Like we are getting a lot of meetings. People are reacting to our pitch and story and tools in ways we didn't imagine ourselves. So that's on the company side. On the tool side, we are experimenting with different new tools on how we can improve let's say the rep efficiency and productivity. A lot of our folks are using tools themselves, and then they write to us that, hey, I use this tool, I created a podcast, or I created this article for my customer with little to no effort, and the outcomes are fantastic. So right now, I don't think we have made big bets on the tools that we want to use internally, but we are in the evaluation phase, and we'll soon be making some decisions in the coming weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because AI has been around for a long time, right? You know, you look at like some of the big behemoth SaaS players in the market, the likes of Gong, the likes of Clary, have been, talking about AI for, over a decade. But in the last 12, 24 months, the explosion of OpenAI has made AI, the world's best AI, accessible to everybody, and everybody has it at their fingertips. And I think we're just getting to grips with the power of it, what we can do with it. The use cases are limited, but we're going to be growing and scaling it in an exponential way because the AI is taking on a lot of its own development or supporting a lot of its own development, right? I think the biggest thing that I see, particularly across from a sales standpoint, is just the ability to drive consistency, and to have a consistent interpretation of the conversations that are happening on a day by day basis is really, really powerful. And when you take the sentiment, you take the insights, you take the qualification from conversations that are happening across 50, across 100 reps, it's very, very hard to pick holes or we're salespeople, right? We deal with people, and people, have their own agendas, they have their own narratives, they have their own biases. Like, some people are sort of negative, some people are positive. You can have the execution of the same conversation and have two completely different narratives off the back of it based on who's in the room having that conversation, right? And what I find is that AI really it distills down that conversation and provides you a single consistent interpretation. Now, the AI, it's not going to get everything right 100% of the time, but to have 80% of that right 80% of the time is really, really powerful thing, and it helps ingrain some of the confidence that I have when I'm scouring my pipeline, analyzing some of the deals that are taking place, to have that trust that what I'm looking at is consistent, it's not biased, or if it is biased, it has the same bias across every opportunity. It really gives me confidence. So I'd be interested to get your thoughts on some of the use cases across some of the tools that you are trialing at the moment.
If you allow me to go a little bit back in time to address one thing you just said. So if you look at the cloud adoption globally of AWS, GCP, Azure, when these players started, there was so much fear from the CISOs and the security community that how can we put our data in somebody else's premises? How can we put it in the cloud? And I remember back in the day, let's say 80% of our battle will be CISO and their group. And like everybody else would be convinced, like the CIO sees the value, the business sees the value, the CFO sees the value, everything lines up. But the CISO was not giving a yes, and we'll spend days, months, years to convince them. Now, if you look at it, nobody even asks that can Microsoft store my data more securely than me. It's a fact that these hyperscalers do a much better job than any individual company. So with AI, we are in that era right now where a lot of organizations still have a bit of phobia on what would happen to my data. Hey, don't use my data to train your model and all these things. And we haven't reached that inflection point where that's all right. Let's use and adopt AI because the upside or the potential gains are far more higher than somebody using some kind of your data to potentially train a model. And whereas all the players are committing on legally, contractually, in every way that we won't use your data to train our model. So with AI, I don't think we have reached that inflection point yet, but I also don't think we are far out, because the use cases that are coming out where it is having significant business impact, like they would be forced to make those decisions, like they were made to make the decision for the cloud migration that happened over the last 10 years. And on the use cases, you want me to talk more about the sales GTM side or our business or in the industry?
Yeah, a lot of our listeners are, in GTM teams with inside technology businesses. So, some of the key use cases that you're seeing in the market based on your evaluation of these tech products.
One of our top priorities, or where we are looking for a tool, is helping us research more the customers, knowing their pain points better. Like back in the day, I remember we used to read the 10K reports and, create our summaries and present to each other to make sure, like, if you read, like, get 5 people's perspective, you make sure you haven't missed anything in 10K. Now it has gotten easier, just upload it in a tool and you get the summary. So, but everybody can do that. It has become easier. So if you can do it, anybody else can do it. So how can AI help us in really researching well the customer? So I would start, let's say, at the beginning of the funnel, where I think there is an opportunity there, where you're looking for tools there. Then what you were saying a little bit, or what Satya Nadella recently announced in one of his interviews, that SaaS will be dead and AI will take over all the application logic. And I see that in our business, in the sense Salesforce is like a database. There are tons of Google Sheets everywhere. There is data scattered, meeting notes scattered all over the place. And it's so hard to make sense of what is actually happening with a particular customer. Is that upcoming renewal actually at risk or not? And right now, like, when was the last time we connected with them? When was the last time they had a support issue? How many support issues they have had? And like, we have all the information, but for me to be sure about an upcoming renewal, it is like 10,000 data points needed to be gathered in at least 1,000 places.
I think that's one of the biggest problems, right? There was a Salesforce report and it back end of last year. Like AI is an interpreter of data, right? It's only going to be as useful as the data that exists in the systems which we attach it to. And it's shocking, Ebster, shameless plug, but we plug into Salesforce, right? And what we do is we help import some of the contact and activity data that has taken place, because notoriously that's missing, 60-70% missing when we connect to CRM systems. But that's just one use case, right? It's one use case of, right, I'm going to put my AI into the CRM. The CRM might actually not be the point of contact anymore. If you've got an AI agent that sits over the top of your Salesforce system, like, I don't need to log into Salesforce. I just need to use the AI agent, or I can engage with the AI agent that can do the things that I need it to do, or tell me the information that I need. But its source of record is the underlying data that's in the system. And I think that's probably the single biggest problem for businesses at this precise moment in time, is where do they get their data? How do they get their hands on the data? How do they make sure that the AI has 100% visibility of all the data points that it needs? Because otherwise it's going to spit out misnomers. It's not going to understand the full picture and therefore give you biased or incomplete information.
Definitely. And I think it's high time we start taking seriously where our account managers are spending their time. I see on LinkedIn also a lot of startups that were selling to the CROs or the VP of sales. It's hard for them to become successful because oftentimes the sales people are the highest paid people in any organization, and the CRO has a view that I am paying you so much money. It takes an hour to update Salesforce. Spend that hour to update Salesforce. That is the attitude I have seen very often. Whereas here, an AI small investment could save them those hours, which they could spend on researching and prospecting in this new AI age, to get attention from buyers, which is extremely hard to get right now.
Absolutely. Like a salesperson should be selling. They're highly skilled, trained individuals. They do not need to be doing admin. They need to be spending time selling, and anything that the AI can do to alleviate some of that burden, but make sure that the systems have the information they need, is the absolute win in my book.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm a LinkedIn junkie, right? I spend a lot of my time on LinkedIn. I can read 100 posts about, sales strategy, about, sales framework, sales methodologies, all the tech in the world. In your mind, what's the secret sauce? What's the one thing that you don't hear we haven't heard a million articles about that has got you to the position that you are today?
Sorry, everything that comes to my mind, you might have heard it elsewhere. So one thing that comes to my mind, let's say an error I made in my previous jobs, that your peer group is equally, if not more important than your direct reports. So take extreme care of your peer group, build partnerships and bridges with them, and not just fight for your direct reports all the time with everybody else. But I'm sure Sam Jacobs or KD or some of the other guys have talked about this on their LinkedIn.
It's not a common one, right? It's not a common one that I see a lot, but I have heard that. I have heard that before. But no, I appreciate it. It is an important one. Your first team is your leadership team, not your direct reports. I buy into that 100%. I'm going to wrap it up there. It's been fantastic having you on, Raja. There's lots of really interesting insight. Thank you for your time. I'll hand the mic over to you if there's anything that you would like to add, anything that you would like to say to the audience before we sign off.
It would sound cliche, but I think what I would encourage everyone to dream big. For a rural kid out of India, to be where I am, I think I always kept on dreaming, always kept on learning, and be fearless. There is like one bad day doesn't matter. There are so many good days ahead of you.
Love the message, love the sentiment. Thank you very much again. Thank you to all our listeners. We look forward to seeing all of you on the next episode of Ebster Revenue Insights podcast. But for now, I will say goodbye.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Revenue Insights from Ebsta. If you want to learn more from some of the brightest minds on how to predictably and efficiently grow revenue, then subscribe to our newsletter. We'll deliver actionable insights straight to your inbox. Go to ebsta.com/newsletter. See you soon.